joining us here on Indivisible. I'm your host, John Stubbins, and we are thrilled to have you with us tonight, America. This is a show where we put God, family, and country first, and we will always tell you the truth. Look, I want to get right to it here tonight, but before we do, I want to go back over again our upcoming documentary, American Anarchy. Please go to our website, and that is johnstubbins.com. If you can't see it here on the American Anarchy poster, here it is, a little more livid for you. johnstubbins.com. You can donate there, $10, $100, whatever you'd like. As always, the show is on Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern on Hunt Channel. And if you don't have Hunt Channel, you can download it for free on your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, your smart TV. Just go to www.huntchannel.tv and you can download the app and you can watch the show every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we've got some amazing shows coming up. As always, I want to thank our partners who are with us just constantly, no matter what we do. And we're thrilled to have them. The event in Nashville to raise funds for the documentary was the kickoff. We've got several new events in the works, and we're going to be announcing those very, very, very shortly. So just hang in there on that. But to stay up to date on what we're doing, you can always go to the website. Again, that's johnstubbins.com. We're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. This show is about Americans that are doing great things, and not every show is easy. Some shows are harder than others when people are dealing with tragedy in their lives, or problems with their family, or really lifting up to the Lord to have prayers answered. But in spite of all that, everybody that comes on this show is doing amazing things, amazing work out there in your community, out there in your state, nationally. It doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter what, spectrum they're coming from, whether it's sports or politics or film or restaurateurs. It doesn't really matter. What matters to us is that American doing amazing things? And are they doing, out of the ordinary to add to society and contribute? And we're lucky today to have our friend Steve Abramowitz. He is the editor-in-chief of Mill Creek View and also host of the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. And I want to bring on my friend right now. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great, my friend. You are doing God's work. Thank you.
And so are you, brother. And that's why we're having you. You're an American who's doing amazing things. You're out there in your state, in your community, nationally, and we're thrilled to have you. Tell the audience a little bit about, what you do.
All right. So the Mill Creek View Tennessee is a part of a stable of podcasts now. We have the Mill Creek View Florida, which just launched with a great hostess, Kat Stansel, who has been in activist politics on the center right for a long time. Forced to move even righter because the center keeps moving, as you're well aware. That Overton window is in my neighbor's house at this point. It's so far over there. And it all started with what was called the Mill Creek View podcast, which is based in Mill Creek, Washington, the most liberal, progressive, Marxist communist state in the nation. It beats California on a head-to-head basis quite often, and I can't even count Oregon as a state anymore, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, and Oregon is sandwiched right there in between them.
Right there in between them, although they're trying to divide themselves up to be part of Idaho. That's how bad it is.
I know.
Idaho.
You know, and I
So
got to tell you, if I was out there, I would certainly consider Idaho as a destination. Idaho is beautiful.
we looked at it. We looked at it, but the motivation was school, and the Idaho school system, unfortunately, is not good enough. But the Tennessee one was, and so I moved my
Gotcha.
show from Washington to here. Actually, a year ago next week, I put up the last load of stuff from the house in the car. My dog, my black lab, her and I, we drove across country to meet up with my wife and kids who were already here because Washington had basically the last straw, let's just say. And so,
Just out of curiosity, Steve, what were some of the things that kind of, added up to that final straw?
well, the funny thing is I was on the radio with Dory Monson, who was a hero of mine at the time because he was the only conservative voice in Washington State left, who died on New Year's Eve of last year. So we're both gone. But I was motivated to keep the ball rolling. And so my daughter's swim team, which was a summer swim rec league of all things, decided that if they wanted to keep competing, she was 15 at the time, they had to have started puberty blockers and testosterone at age 9 in order to have the full cycle by 14. Oh, and by the way, we're going to open up the locker rooms to biological males and walk around with a clipboard and break the rules by asking kids out of earshot of coaches and parents their sexual preferences, just things that kids should have. Absolutely. So it was a very early indicator. This is a while ago now, this couple years ago, very early indicator of what Riley Gaines had to suffer through ultimately at the peak of that, or a long list of other folks. So long story short, I have a new host in Washington, Vincent Cavallari, former candidate for Congress, current Mill Creek City Council member and deputy sheriff. And so he's taken the mantle there, and I kept this one going. So we're about 120 episodes in about Tennessee, the volunteer state, and our world today. And you've been on it. So,
Loved being on your show. I guess one of my questions would be, obviously there was I guess my question would be, after all that being said, was there like a final straw that broke the camel's back for you?
The locker rooms was it. We had already moved. We had moved out of King County, which is where Seattle is, prior to that, to try to find more America, more conservative nature. So we moved to the next county north, which is called Snohomish County, which is where Mill Creek happens to be. And so when I took over the newspaper, I was covering the news, and I knew I was trying to be the Paul Revere, the clarion call to say, look at what these far left, not even Democrats, they're actually progressive Marxist communists, are doing to King County, and by extension, Olympia, Washington, which is the capital of the state, passing laws that everybody has to suffer for. We have to stop this. And so there was the November election, not even a year ago, and everybody I backed who was a Republican, I even created a second newspaper just for this called the Snohomish View, to help them spread their word further and further, because nobody else would do it. The Seattle Times wouldn't do it. The Everett Herald wouldn't do it. The Linwood Times wouldn't do it. I was it. And I was just screaming from the rafters like a good Samaritan would do, a patriot would do, like you, and no one was listening. And they lost. They all got their butts kicked. I'll keep it clean for the family-friendly show of yours. But when that was the final straw, I'm like, well, forget it. This house that we were building to be a rental, let's live in it. Let my daughter have a good educational experience for her junior and senior years, not what was coming down the pike in Seattle, both private and public. And as a concerned dad, we just made the decision and we did it. And it's been happily ever after, to be honest with you. I still have to cover the news in Washington because I'm the editor-in-chief of the paper. And man, is it depressing, because it's exactly what I said. It's not rumor. It's not the sex ed that you had as a kid in the 70s and 80s, and they're just reinstating it. So it's a good thing. It's a whole nother kettle of fish, and you're not paying attention and you're voting inappropriately. You're uneducated voters. Stop it. And I hate to be the I told you so guy, because that's not my mission, but I told you. It's exactly right. And so now they've institutionalized, they've legalized some things that people to this day, when I tell them in Tennessee, can you believe this? No, you're lying. You're making it up. No, it's true. Here it is, signed by the governor. Crazy times. But I'd much rather be watching it here on a high definition TV and talking to you about it on StreamYard on your show than sitting there living it and making sure that, or being afraid every day my daughter has to go to school,
right,
or the mall, and what could possibly happen. And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I'm a get off your lawn guy. But you know what? Not worth it, because there's no protection. There's no police, and there's no city council member who's going to step up and say, hey, not only are the potholes bad, but the fentanyl that you just stepped on and gave you a toxic event, and we had to call the EMTs and airlift you to the, the general hospital, which is a disaster. Not good. Not good.
Yeah. Hey, man, it's the summer of love, right?
It was. And the governor was very kind to say, oh, that's news to me. I didn't know that was happening. I know friends, because I've been in business a long time. I'm older than I look, that owned commercial real estate in that 2-block radius that was overcome by Chop Chaz that you're talking about, the summer of love, where they were dealing guns and drugs down on the street, murders and rapes and everything. The renters, the residents of those buildings were held hostage for over a week. They couldn't go downstairs to go to the grocery store. They couldn't call AT&T or Verizon or Comcast and say, my cable's out, come help me. They were prisoners, and nobody ever talks about that.
Well, I'll tell you something else, and this constantly bothers me, because these people that we're talking about here on the left, these Marxists, they've tried to capitalize and, I guess, take hostage the term love wins, right?
Yeah, love is love, yeah.
But their kind of love is chaos and anarchy and murder and theft and arson and Marxism, right? That's not the kind of love that I know.
No, it's actually hate. They always do the opposite. Saul Alinsky said, "Look in the mirror."
It's certainly not the kind of love that my God would appreciate.
Well, John, speaking of your God, the rainbow is God's covenant with humanity that He'll never flood us again. The far left has adopted that rainbow, starting back with Jesse Jackson saying, "Well, if God's not going to punish us again like that anyway, neener, we'll take the rainbow from you." First it was Skittles, then it was Lucky Charms. Now it's the far left flag. I'm not a big fan of that. I want the rainbow back to God's covenant with the humans.
Yeah, they took that hostage as well. And by the way, Jesse Jackson has left the Rainbow Coalition. It was just announced a couple of days ago.
He's not useful anymore. He's about 100 years old. So Al Sharpton will take it.
A long time ago. Tell the audience about some of your show's past guests.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the marquee names would be like Marsha Blackburn has been on my show. I've been blessed for that. There's a Nashville mayor's race. I've had the 2 Republicans on. Wonderful African-American Christian gal. Natisha Brooks was on. Alice Rowley, again, the other Republican. Early voting going on right now. I've had some amazing authors. I've had amazing doctors. I've had FBI whistleblower Steve Friend twice, as a matter of fact. When his book was released, he came on. Kyle Seraphin. I just had a book author this last week who has a book called The Fall of the FBI. He was a phenomenal, successful show. Thomas J. Baker is his name. I've had Dr. Tenpenny. That was an amazing show. Almost 3,000 views on Rumble and counting. Not counting the iTunes and the Podomatic stuff. My prior greatest hit before that was the editor who wrote the anonymously written book Turtles All the Way Down, about the history of the vaccine business and industry, and how it's kind of been a fraud ever since day one. And so what we're learning now about COVID and all the rest, we knew this already if we had read that book. And so I highly recommend that book. So a lot of that. We've had #1 hit-making jazz musician John Novello. There's 120 shows. Next week, I'm having the mayor of Brentwood, Tennessee, who's just the suburb, basically, of Nashville.
I know Brentwood very well.
So he'll have great things to say. I've had radio hosts like conservative talk show host Matt Murphy. I've had you on. I was blessed to go to John Rich's Mount Richmore and talk to about 20 people back to back live. I'd never done it before, from John Rich to Kyle Rittenhouse to the McCloskeys to Lee Grinwood, great American. I saw that was a clip of yours, a photo of that. That was a great night. So I've just been banging it out 3 days a week, trying to tell the story as best I can. And then I created the CEO special where I interview businesses. There he is. There they are. Yeah, I was right around the corner from that photo. Not blessed to have been in the photo, but close enough to experience the moment. There's Kyle. Yeah, that was a good night.
Yeah, no, it was a great event. And by the way, uh, my friend David Sams is over there in Brentwood. I love David. And also, we're talking about Washington. Simi Bird is running for governor out there. My friend Joe Kent has been running for Congress out there as well. So we're going to hope to, to get them over the top.
So my host Vincent Cavalieri just had Semi Bird on. It was a phenomenal show about race and Republican politics in Washington State and how, minority of a minority, let's say. Great show. So
yeah, we had him on as well, and we talked about a lot of the same things, including Chad and the Love Zone, and just what people are saying on the ground in Washington, what they're tired of. What change they want to see.
They're tired of Jay Inslee for one, I'll tell you that much. And Bob Ferguson, his heir apparent, who was the AG for all these years, running roughshod over everybody's civil rights.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Steve to talk about a lot more.
Thanks, John.
See you in just a minute.
Hunter Nation is the ultimate we the people in the conservation community, holding our elected employees accountable to the hunting, fishing, trapping, freedom lifestyle that has brought wildlife back to the healthiest and most thriving condition in our lifetime. HunterNation.org is the epicenter for freedom and wildlife conservation in America. I am Hunter Nation.
And we're back with Steve Abramowitz. Steve, I tell you, I want to dig into a couple things here. We've got this Barbie movie coming out here. What? I don't even want, I have no thoughts.
I got lots of them.
So I'll just let you have the floor. Go for it.
So I don't forget, and to segue into that, I just want to mention that Aaron Spradlin was on my show a week ago. Aaron Spradlin is a real life Tim Ballard. Tim Ballard is a real life person, but Aaron Spradlin saves kids from sex trafficking and a life of prostitution and destitution and suicide. And he runs a company or a charity, I should say, called, sorry, I forget, it's got a kind of a mouth, Mission for America. And because of that recent timeliness of the success of Sound of Freedom with the Tim Ballard story starring Jim Caviezel, that is a hugely important story. And people need to know that exists. They just aired that movie, or whatever you call it, showed that movie to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, I think last night. So a very timely show. That's the type of thing I do on my show. Real life superheroes doing what they can to make our world a better place with sometimes some very sensitive topics. And so Barbie kind of plays into that because we're dealing with something not only in Hollywood, but out of DC, which you are very aware of, and I'm very aware of, because I tried to create this center-right or sometimes far-right communication device, this network, this show, to tell the stories that CNN.com, now Fox.com, USA Today, New York Times, of course, Washington Post, of course, will not tell. And like the Tim Ballard story, like the Aaron Spradlin story. And what you see is you've got a bunch of kids in America who grew up on Barbie, right? My wife did, my grandmother did. These people had Barbie as the kind of American dream house, is what it was called,
sure,
role model.
Barbie,
so they come up,
Barbie and Ken.
So they come out with a movie. Obviously, they're going to sell toys, just like Toy Story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like Star Wars, whatever. The normal tentpole live action movie with a beautiful actress to get people in the door, sell tickets, and sell supplemental stuff, action figures, shirts, like a concert would do, like a music concert would do. Don't only buy the ticket, come buy the shirt. Everyone will know you went to the show.
Coffee mug, the pencils, everything.
But we got into this era in the last 20 years where they've started subversively sticking in stuff that you and I and our spouses and our grandparents and our veteran friends and our Republican friends would not agree with. And so in the case of Barbie, there's a transgenderism, there's anti-family. They actually beat the dolls to death, break their heads on the movie, saying we are not moms, as a ERA type of Betty Friedan protest, burning the bra, we're beating up our own Barbies, our own product. And that's the point, is that they're willing to sacrifice their own product, their beloved product, Budweiser. In Bud Light's case, we could talk about John Rich again, selling zero product
or
and having
Target. We
or
go
Target.
on. All these different woke companies. Coca-Cola did it.
Right. All because Warner Brothers, who owns Discovery, who owns HBO, who owns the Disney products,
right?
Sorry, not the Disney products, the Barbie products, decided that in the boardroom, wokeism sells more than flyover country, middle America, the rest of us, 68% of us. And so tie-ins, totally wrong. And we can see that in the numbers. Look at the bomb of Indiana Jones, a layup. Look at the bomb of the last Star Wars movies.
Well, not only that, but let's look at the nosedive of Disney. Disney's gone woke. Look,
okay. You buried the lead. You buried the lead because I'm all leading up to Kathleen Kennedy, who has hired her husband and her are the largest blockbuster sales team in Hollywood history. I think only Kevin Feige from Marvel is bigger, but she has her influence there, destroying that great brand too.
Absolutely.
And she started all the way back in the ET days with Spielberg. That's where she met her husband. That's where Spielberg met his wife. And so this is a royal family of Disney that is untouchable, cannot be fired. But instead of looking at the bottom line, because they're looking at cumulative returns, she's huge. She has been, no denying it. They're willing to make 9 bombs in a row and destroy the theme park for its family values because of a 5 to 18% of the population. I don't know, because I don't know why. They don't make money. They don't spend money. They don't have money. They can go to a drag queen show for $5 at the local bar, but can they take a family of 4 to Disney? They don't have a family. So the business model is so broken, which is why I love my CEO show. We talk about doing good business. Disney is ruining all the beloved American franchises by putting an elder care working Indiana Jones in there, putting a weird Luke Skywalker there, putting a, they ruined the Willow series. They had to pull it season 1. It goes down the list, and they just don't learn.
Transgender is good, heterosexual bad.
And look at what happened today. This is not like 2 months ago or a case study for the ages. This is Jason Aldean comes out with a patriotic hometown video, and CMT, Country Music Television, pulls it because that's owned by Discovery Warner. And the guy and the mayor of Columbia, where not down far from where I am, comes out and says, "Oh, please, the next artist to do this, be peaceful, be Dolly Parton, be Garth Brooks," who had a huge failure in a bar trying to compete with John Rich across the street on Broadway.
Yeah, these people have no spine. Whoever's running these networks, they have zero spine. Okay?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I was in college and I was going to go into film, I learned that the MBAs were taking over from the artists, and they were looking at all the pennies. We have to do formula movies, Lethal Weapon 5, because we won't make any money if it's not exactly like this. People got sick of that. And then the bean counters changed to be, no, we just have to be diversity, equity, and inclusion guys and gals. And they've actually fired 5 of them, but yet they put another one right back in there, and then they continue on the way, because Kathleen Kennedy has shown that if you're going to work in Hollywood, it's her way or the highway. And they don't care that the highway's got potholes all over.
Yeah, and and like you said, they don't care if they make 9 bombs in a row that lose money, as long as they force that message down your throat.
Well, they're going to learn the hard way, because with movies like yours and with movies like Sound of Freedom, and before that, The Chosen, the independent model is making a comeback. They didn't think it would make $100 million for Sound of Freedom, but it is. No. And they're really confused, because they said, well, wait, why don't they want to see Indiana Jones in a wheelchair? Why don't they want to see Barbie with a male penis or whatever it is? I don't, because they just don't get it. So that just basically Hollywood needs to go away. The independent model needs to rise back up, just like United Artists when Charlie Chaplin owned it after the witch hunts of communism, although it turned out to be true. Not the blacklists of Hollywood. Sorry, I shouldn't say the witch hunt. That would be this, yeah. So long story short, in my opinion, I'm very mad that the business of entertainment won't let the good stuff out, like your movie and Sound of Freedom, or my friend Dr. Ming Wang's site, because Universal is only going to run it for 1 weekend. And so he's going to have to distribute it through interesting new channels, which God bless it, we have them now. Like this, you and I are talking on new technology that didn't exist 3 years ago. to remind everybody that entertainment and art can live together and is a good thing. The sad thing is, in your case, somebody's life had to be destroyed for the real life story to be told.
That's right.
As opposed to a fiction. Or Tim Ballard had to experience terrible things and then try to sneak it out. But you ever heard of the Streisand effect?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And let me make a couple quick points here. A couple other films come to mind that have done very well recently. His Only Son, my friends Kenny and Kyle Sailors, and also Jesus Revolution, the Irwin brothers, who we work with. So
Andy Irwin has been on my show, and it was a great blockbuster.
Yeah, and then my second thought is, I want to go back to Disney for just a quick minute here. I grew up watching Disney. Okay, and when I was a kid, we had Pinocchio, we had Snow White, we had Sleeping Beauty, we had, I'm on The Lady of the Tramp. I mean, on and on and on. So many great stories. Walt Disney would be turning over in his grave if he knew it was alive today and see what they're doing to his conglomerate that he built and turn it into a magical place of ideas and thoughts and imagination, not just the theme parks, but anytime you stepped into see one of his films, and they destroyed that.
They took advantage of it, actually. Yeah, it's sort of like BLM, right? They took advantage of a crisis of race relations in America, raised a bunch of money, spent it on themselves. So what happened
is based on a lie.
What happened based on a lie. So Bob Iger gets the job after Eisner, comes in, hires Kathleen Kennedy. They gobble up all these beloved franchises like Star Wars and Willow and Indiana Jones and Marvel, like we talked about, and immediately went to work taking advantage of the goodwill that Walt Disney and all the rest of the creators, Stan Lee, developed, and squeezed them out because they said, "Oh,
Steve Ditko,
yep, they're going to come see a Captain America movie. We might as well plant a little subversive seed in there about communism or about transgenderism or about anti-familyism because that's who we are. But we don't want to just say it overtly. Come see a movie about that would bomb. Come see a movie that you think is about something else, and that's the thing. They're going to fool them a few times. Yeah, you'll see like part 3 of Thor, but will you see 4 if it's like so many repetitive?
Not anymore.
Exactly.
Not, they've destroyed it again. Exactly. That model is done. So,
and you mentioned, by the way, those classics that built up the goodwill that Walt Disney was blessed to have had the talent to do, the man Walt Disney. But now look what they've done. They try to live action them. So they take Little Mermaid, beloved movie, made a lot of money, and they put a black girl in that role. Why did they do that?
Right. Yeah, they're doing
no reason. Didn't help the story. Didn't do it.
Yeah, they're doing it across the board, even with comics.
Pinocchio. There's a new new Snow White with her name is Snow White. Skin is white as snow, but she's Hispanic.
Green Lantern
so what are they
was not black. Sorry.
Well, he was.
Everybody, Steve Abramowitz, amazing. Make sure that you check him out. Again, I've got rolling at the bottom here. We can go on and talk for hours. Unfortunately, we only have a half-hour show. So at the bottom there, Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast is on Rumble and iTunes. And then Steve's website, www.mcview.us. And then also CEO Special, which is a TV show on YouTube and Instagram. Steve, I want to thank you for coming on, brother.
Hey, John, just real quick, God bless you for all you're doing, man. I mean, you are tireless. Without you, I don't know where the information would come from. So keep up the good work. Don't stop. Just if you ever get disgruntled or disappointed, just power through because you are the man.
Love you, man. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Steve.
Peace.
God bless you. Well, another great show. And folks, look, we're going to have a bunch coming. I can tell you that. It's going to be a busy, busy summer and into the fall. We've got events coming up. It's going to be busy. We love you. God bless you, your families, and God bless America.